Good morning, everyone. Happy Monday and welcome to Money Mondays. I'm Belinda Ray, the Director of Strategic Partnerships here at Greater Portland Council of Governments, here with my colleague, Paul Johnson, who is the Director of Economic Development. And we are doing this webinar series, Money Mondays, to help connect our community members and our partners to funding opportunities and regional resources. And this is episode number 3. So we thank you for joining us. And with that, I think we will dive right in. I will share my screen. There we are. And Paul, I think you are up first.
Sure. Thanks, Belinda. I think, are we episode 4? It might be episode 4, but regardless,
I don't know.
might be 4. Okay.
Let me see if I can
So
advance your screen. There we go.
real quick, I just want to talk about Brownfields 101, but this is actually a lie. When I taught math at Southern Maine Community College, there was an algebra 050, which meant it wasn't for credit yet. It wasn't quite 101. Really, this is Brownfields 050. I just wanted to take a quick moment before Belinda gets into her programming to plug Brownfields program. We have about $2 million left that can be activated to clean up any areas that are contaminated and are looking to be redeveloped. So Belinda, if you want to go to the next slide. Really, this is just a pitch to let everybody know. There we go. Oh. What is a brownfield? I know a couple of you, I see your names, you know what a brownfield is, but if you don't know what a brownfield is, it's essentially a property where expansion or redevelopment or reuse might be complicated by the presence of previous hazardous material, pollutant, or contamination. So if you are walking around town or driving around town and you see this site and you say to yourself, why is this site still ugly? Why is that gas station abandoned and nothing is happening? Why has that been sitting there for 20 years? It's probably because it's a brownfield and a developer does not want to touch that brownfield because it is super expensive to clean up, or they're scared of what it's like to have to interact with all the contaminants. So this program allows us to either grant or loan really cheap money to developers or nonprofits to help people clean up the brownfield and help convert that gas station to maybe more housing units or a multi-use building. Examples of a brownfield: abandoned gas stations, textile mills, industrial plants, dry cleaners, and other abandoned and industrial commercial properties. I'm sure you all are familiar with all the mills in Westbrook and Saco and Biddeford. At one time or the other, most of those were brownfields. They were huge projects. I assure you that somebody somewhere along the line accessed the Brownfields program, and it might have been through us, GPCOG. So that's my quick pitch to say, hey, we have $2 million. If you have a little site and you say, hey, why isn't that being developed? Call me. Maybe I can do some legwork for you. Maybe I can call who owns it and hopefully get that money onto the street and get that the one site in town that's an eyesore, we could turn it around. Thank you.
Awesome. Great. Thank you, Paul. And today I am covering the Clean Heavy Duty Vehicles Grant. This one was released recently. It's from the Inflation Reduction Act, and it's an EPA grant that will help you replace Class 6 and Class 7 vehicle fleets with new zero-emission vehicles. So there are 2 sub-programs here, school buses and vocational vehicles. If you're doing school buses, you need to be replacing at least 10 to apply. And if it's vocational vehicles, has to be at least 3. There are some stipulations for the vehicles. They obviously have to be Class 6 or Class 7. They need to be fully operational at the time of the application submission. And they need to meet certain model and year requirements, which are fully explained in the Notice of Funding Opportunity. If you decide to pursue it, you'll want to read those requirements as well. Some examples of Class 6 and Class 7 vehicles. The Magic School Bus, we all loved that growing up. That was a Class 6 vehicle. These are medium duty or light heavy duty vehicles. They weigh between 19,500 pounds and 26,000 pounds. School buses, single axle trucks, beverage trucks, rack trucks, these are all Class 6 vehicles. Class 7, a famous one, is that bus from Speed. That's a Class 7 vehicle. Garbage and recycling trucks, transit buses, some school buses do fall into class 7, and they weigh between 26,000 pounds, 33,000 pounds, heavy duty vehicles. What this grant will fund is the replacement of vehicles with zero emission vehicles. That means fully battery electric or hydrogen fuel cell vehicles. It will also cover, to an extent, the purchase and installation of the infrastructure you need to support these vehicles. That might be charging units, battery storage, on-site power generation systems, meters, panels, that kind of stuff. We'll also cover workforce development, some driver or mechanic training related to the maintenance and operation of these vehicles. And then on top of that, your implementation costs. So your personnel to put this program in place, contracts, consultants that you need, those can be added on top of per vehicle caps. And we'll get to those caps in just a second. So again, it's divided into 2 sub-programs. There's school bus and then vocational vehicles. For the school bus program, it'll cover 70% of your total funds. There's a different amount per school bus as well. We'll get to that. Have to be class 6, class 7, again, minimum of 10 buses. Vocational vehicles, level of funding is 30% of total funds. And this is all the vehicles I just talked about, class 6, class 7, minimum of 3 vehicles for the vocational side. And here's a chart that gives you an idea of the cost that they will cover. So there's a cap for each vehicle that they will go up to, and they are covering a certain percentage up to that amount. So for example, if you were replacing 3 garbage trucks, which are under refuse hauler here, with battery electric vehicles, it would cover 50% of your cost up to 260,000. So if you're replacing 3, you can request up to 780,000 to cover 50% of your truck cost. And then you can add your implementation costs on top of that. And you do not have to use this money all toward buying the vehicle. You can use the money toward infrastructure, toward other things as well. This is just the way that they are determining how much they will fund. Who's eligible? Municipalities, obviously. If you have a nonprofit transportation agency doing your school transportation, they are eligible. Might want to let them know, Indian tribes and states. And then key features. The minimums in this first column I've gone over. The cost share varies by vehicle and type and ranges from 20% to 67% that you would need to cover. And the implementation costs, again, are covered outside of those vehicle caps. If you apply for this grant, the period of performance is 24 months. And that means you have 24 months to purchase and install infrastructure or pay for infrastructure. They will consider up to 36 months if you make a case for that. Deadline to apply is July 25th. It's a federal grant, so it is a difficult one. It's a robust one, but there's 8 weeks to do this right now. That's plenty of time to pull this together. Good time to hire a grant writer, get them in and get this going. And just so you know how competitive it is, there's $932 million that they have for this program this year. 50 million of it they are planning to spend in New England. That's their goal, and it will depend on applications. If they get fewer from other regions, there might be more here. They want to put 70% overall to school buses and 30% to vocational. And of all of the money that's out there, 40% is going, they're trying to put to air quality non-attainment areas. These are places that do not meet minimum air quality standards, and we don't have any of those in Maine. There are a few in Connecticut and a few in Massachusetts, but there is 50 million coming to New England, so we would still be very competitive for this. The timeline, Monday, July 8th is the final date to submit questions. Thursday is the deadline for the grant. They plan to notify people in November of 24 and award in December of 24 so that you can start in January of 2025. I will just say these deadlines are not always accurate in my experience, but the deadline for the grant application is accurate. The notification and award doesn't always happen in that time frame. If you want to find out more, we have the website here, we have the helpline. There is also a technical assistance helpline. So if you're putting together this grant and you're having trouble and you don't know what they want, there is someone to call, to email and say, what do you mean on this form? What do I put in box 4? So that help is there. There are webinars. There's another webinar coming up, and there are how to apply slides. So I hope some folks will be interested in that. I forgot to say earlier that if you have questions, we love for you to type them in to the Q&A box. And of course, if questions arise later, we are happy to answer them. You can contact either me or Paul at any time. I do see something in the chat.
Yeah, so the question in the chat is if municipalities can receive brownfield funding, and the answer is yes. It's a little complicated. You cannot be the responsible party for the contamination. So a great example of something that doesn't work with the brownfields program is a landfill. Because if you think of a landfill, typically a municipality is responsible for that contamination. So the brownfields program, it's not punitive. It's not made to penalize people. It's actually made to encourage people to take on projects that maybe normally they wouldn't. So typically there's either a change of ownership or an easy way to demonstrate that, hey, we own this land or this parcel, but we're not the ones that contaminated it. But yeah, the answer is yeah, towns can own it. We've had housing authorities own it. We've had private developers own it. We've had towns own it. We've had schools own it. So there's all sorts of entities that can own it, but the people that own it aren't eligible if they are the people that contaminated the property. So you can think, if you're thinking landfill, not this program. There's one out there that's a little complicated through the state that I'm not super familiar with, so I won't answer anything specific to that. But the answer is yes. Municipalities can own the brownfields. Yep.
All right. Another thing, if you have particular topics or opportunities you would like us to cover here, feel free to reach out and we will try to get those in as well. We like to give you funding opportunities, but if there are other topics, like how to apply for something, we might be able to do, we want to keep to 15 minutes. We always want to keep to our 15 minutes, so it won't be an in-depth tutorial, but we're happy to cover anything that's going to help you access the resources that are available to you in our region. Paul, anything else you'd like to say today?
Nope, 2 minutes under time. That's efficient right there.
Awesome.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks. Have a great week. We'll see you next week.